Welcome back to Pulse of the Planet, bringing you the latest news from around the world. On March 27, 2025, President Donald Trump stunned the world with a sweeping 25% tariff on all imported light-duty vehicles and a wide range of auto parts. This wasn't a targeted move, it hit key partners from Canada and Mexico to Europe and Asia, upending decades of global auto trade. The administration invoked the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, claiming national security and a push to force automakers to bring jobs back to the U.S. The tariffs rolled out in two waves, first on finished vehicles, then on auto parts, threatening to paralyze North America's tightly woven manufacturing system. A confusing exemption for Canadian vehicles, only if over 50% of parts were US-made, sent companies scrambling to audit their supply chains. Instead of clarity, the policy created a bureaucratic nightmare, with automakers buried in red tape and compliance headaches. Industry leaders, like Ford's CEO Jim Farley, warned the tariffs would bring chaos, not prosperity, dismantling the global supply chains they'd spent decades building. The message from the White House was clear: the era of globalized, cost-optimized auto manufacturing was over. But automakers knew you can't wall off one part of the assembly line without risking the collapse of the entire system. North America's auto industry is a single integrated machine perfected around just-in-time production. A single part might cross borders multiple times before ending up in a finished car. The new 25% tariff on parts was a stick of dynamite in this system, threatening to shatter it. Over half the parts in US-assembled cars are imported, making the idea of a purely American car a myth. Mike Van Bach, a GM union official, warned the sector could seize up in 2 weeks. Factories have no room for delays. Every border crossing now meant new costs, delays and paperwork, penalizing efficiency and making business as usual unsustainable. Automakers faced a brutal choice: absorb billions in new costs or risk shutting down for lack of parts. The tariffs exposed a fundamental misunderstanding of modern manufacturing. Isolationism doesn't work in a globalized industry. The result wasn't a manufacturing boom, but panic as companies confronted the imminent breakdown of their supply chains. The North American auto engine, once seamless, was now grinding toward a halt. Wall Street's reaction to the tariffs was immediate and brutal. Shares of Ford, GM, and Stellantis plunged, erasing billions in value. Investors saw the tariffs as a direct tax on Detroit's business model, threatening profitability and stability. The pain spread to Canadian suppliers like Magna and Linamar, whose fortunes are tied to Detroit's health. The market's verdict: a deeply integrated industry under siege. Yet, electric vehicle makers like Tesla and Rivian rallied. Investors saw them as less exposed, with more domestic supply chains and fewer legacy entanglements. The chaos for traditional automakers became an opening for EV upstarts. The result: a stark dividing line between legacy automakers facing higher costs and disruption, and EV pioneers seen as nimbler and better positioned. The tariffs didn't just disrupt business, they redrew the competitive map of the American auto industry. In a single trading day, the winners and losers of this new protectionist era were laid bare. Automakers initially tried to absorb the tariff costs, fearing lost market share if they raised prices. But with billions in new expenses, GM projected a $5 billion hit, Ford $3 billion. This strategy couldn't last. Analysts warned that even US-assembled cars would get pricier, with new vehicle costs projected to rise by $3,500 to $12,000. The policy meant to help American industry was about to hit American families hardest. By August, the first signs of inflation appeared. Destination fees on new cars jumped 8.5%, a quiet way to pass on costs. The industry had seen this before. 2018's steel and aluminum tariffs led to higher costs, layoffs, and no manufacturing renaissance. The 2025 auto tariffs were the same playbook, but on a much larger scale. The lesson: trade wars rarely deliver promised gains, but they always create casualties. Both corporations and consumers were now squarely in the crossfire. The price of protectionism was about to be paid at the dealership. The administration promised tariffs would force automakers to reshore jobs and factories to the US. But building a new plant is a billion-dollar, years-long process: land, permits, construction, workforce, and a whole new supplier network. Honda's new Indiana plant, touted as a tariff victory, was actually planned years before and unrelated to the policy. Industry leaders made it clear, you can't will a factory into existence overnight. Reshoring is a decade-long strategy, not a quick fix. The political rhetoric clashed with economic reality. Most analysts predicted the tariffs would make some models unprofitable, leading to layoffs and plant closures, not job creation. Even union leaders' support was met with skepticism. The real risk tariffs would destroy more jobs than they created. The promise of a manufacturing boom was a myth, disconnected from how the global auto industry actually works. The reshoring narrative was politically appealing but economically hollow. America's trading partners didn't take the tariffs lying down. Canada condemned the move, announced a $2 billion support package for its auto sector, and prepared retaliatory tariffs. Ironically, the chaos made Canada look more attractive for future auto investment, especially for EVs and batteries. The US also slapped new tariffs on Japan, India, and even Swiss watches, escalating trade tensions worldwide. The scattergun approach created global uncertainty. No industry or country felt safe. Allies and adversaries alike condemned the chaos, bracing for a drawn-out trade war. The message was clear. In this new era, any trading relationship could be upended overnight. As economic fallout mounted, a legal battle loomed over the administration's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Critics argued the law wasn't meant for sweeping industrial policy, and the Supreme Court fast-tracked a case to decide the president's authority. Meanwhile, the administration doubled down, inviting petitions to expand tariffs to even more auto parts. Reviews of other major tariff programs, on steel, aluminum, and Chinese goods, added to the uncertainty. Businesses faced a dizzying array of deadlines and shifting rules, making long-term planning nearly impossible. The trade war was no longer a single event, but a rolling process with ever-changing rules. Companies were forced into a reactive crouch, bracing for the next directive from Washington. The message, the rules of global trade could change at any moment. For business, the only certainty was uncertainty. The 2025 tariff shock has forced the global auto industry to rethink everything. Other sectors took note. Pharma giant GSK announced a $30 billion US investment after threats of new tariffs, while others pulled back from risky foreign ventures. Even logistics firms like FedEx felt the pain as tariff exemptions vanished. The result, a broader economic decoupling, as companies scrambled to untangle global supply chains. Despite the turmoil, the S&P 500 stayed near record highs, suggesting investors believed the damage could be contained. But for automakers, the reality was daily chaos, soaring costs, and an uncertain future. The era of seamless, just-in-time manufacturing is over. The road ahead is unpaved and perilous. The promise of an American manufacturing renaissance remains distant, while the immediate reality is chaos, retaliation, and profound anxiety.